Welcome to Outrage Overload, a science podcast about outrage and lowering the temperature. As we approach the United States' 250th anniversary, many citizens feel understandably conflicted, torn between recognizing the nation's foundational promise and grappling with the stark realities of our polarized present, where national pride is at a 25-year record low. Look no further than the milestone itself. What was meant to be a unified national moment has instead fractured into a turf war between two rival planning organizations. On one side is America 250, the official non-partisan congressional commission created to build a shared, inclusive commemoration. On the other is Freedom 250, a heavily branded, politically aligned initiative launched out of the Trump White House. When even a milestone birthday gets fractured by partisan framing, it's easy to see why so many Americans feel completely turned off and exhausted. Yet opting out of this milestone due to cynicism cedes the very narrative we need to reclaim. And that's what we're going to talk about on this special episode of the Outrage Overload podcast. I'm your host, David Beckemeyer, and today we're stepping back from the constant cycles of toxic polarization and media manipulation to explore the enduring power of America's foundational ideals: liberty, equality, and self-government. To help us navigate this, I've invited a few friends of the show, guests we've spoken with before, to share their perspectives on this anniversary. While modern political discourse is fractured, history reveals that existential friction is baked into the American DNA, from the 1790s to the present day. Through these conversations, we'll see that true patriotism in this era demands more than passive pride. It requires active civic engagement, the courage to respect diverse voices, and the heavy, messy work of perfecting a nation built on a shared belief in freedom. By moving past apathy and refusing to let partisan division rob us of our inheritance, we can choose to show up and continue the work of our predecessors, transforming this moment of uncertainty into an opportunity for renewal. Our first voice is Alex Lovett. Alex Lovett is a senior program officer and historian at Kettering Foundation. He is the host and executive producer of the podcast, The Context.
Okay, so this is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and that's great because the Declaration of Independence was the best part of the founding. And the best part of the Declaration of Independence is that line, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. That is such a perfect ideal. And it written by a slave owner. Like, you know, it so obviously was not true in 1776. But yet, that was the founding idea of the United States of America, that there are no kings, that we are all equal, and all of us deserve a right to participate in our government. And, you know, for 250 years, we haven't quite got there yet, but that is an ideal that is worth striving toward. And I think that ideal, and actually that language, has been very important for civil rights movements, for the women's rights movement. We've gotten closer and closer throughout our history to attaining that ideal. So I'm really happy that it's the 250th of the Declaration and not necessarily of the Constitution, which is a little bit more complicated.
Next up is Sean Evans. Sean Evans is professor of political science and chair of the Department of Political Science, Union University.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things here. One is I think we have to be grateful for the founders, for the character that they showed in creating a new nation. We are the longest serving, longest continuous democracy in existence, for the simple fact that people fear that our selfish impulses will lead us to tyranny. For the simple fact that we have lasted for 250 years, that's worth celebrating in and of itself. And I also think we have to remember that when we declared our independence, we're the first nation who said, here's why we are declaring our independence, because of our belief in liberty, equality, and self-government. And those are the aspirational values that our country continues to try to meet. And while we have had trouble in the past, the things that we have to remember is that we have always made improvement. We've always moved forward by reaffirming and vindicating those values in the Declaration of Independence. And so I think I'm grateful for those values that unite us. But at the same token, I think we have to respect the people who have created these values. I mean, we forget they were committing treason against the hegemon at the time. It takes courage to pledge your life, your property, and your honor to such a task as this, and to do it for these idealistic reasons. I think we have to commend the perseverance that not just the signers showed, but the people who fought in the Revolutionary War, because we weren't doing very well the first 3 or 4 years of that war. To continue to stay with it, that is something that we can commend. So I think that says something about the strength of character of the people who were willing to do what they did to create a new nation. But here's the thing, it's that same character that we have seen shown by the people who have reaffirmed our commitments over time, whether it's the abolitionists, Abraham Lincoln, the suffragists, the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement. All these are trying to appeal to these values that we all hold in common. And I think that's something to be grateful for among the people who continue to reaffirm those principles. And there are people who are still trying to reaffirm those principles today. And so when I look at our nation today, I look at us as united on principle, but divided over meaning and means. And so I think we're united in these principles of liberty, equality, and self-government. We'd probably call it democracy or constitutional democracy today. But we disagree on the meaning of those terms. In political science, we'd say liberty, equality, and democracy are contested concepts in the sense that there is no accepted definition of those. And because of that, we also disagree on the means by which we need to pursue, to make changes to try to attain those aspirational goals that we have set. And so I think as long as we are focusing on these aspirational values, everything's going to work out for us. And I would even go further and say that political movements that do not appeal to these values fail. And so for that reason, I think both the populist movement and the progressive movement will fail because they will appeal to one value, but not all three. And the means that they achieve or that they're trying to pursue are contrary to some of the other values. And I think for those reasons, they're going to fail. It doesn't seem like it today because our parties are not concerned with the consent of the governed, but the consent of the loudest portions of their base. But I think that's also why every election we see ping pong, elect, throw out, elect, throw out, elect, throw out. It's just going to eventually take some people to decide, hey, we're going to have to ignore some of the loudest parts of our base and do what's right for the American people.
It's comforting to view our history this way, as a series of contested concepts that we gradually, inevitably improve upon. We want to believe the blueprint is working, but for some, and perhaps particularly for younger generations of Americans, that gap between the aspirational ideal and the lived reality isn't just a political disagreement. To them, the contradiction at the heart of the founding isn't a historical footnote. It's a systemic failure that continues to claim victims today. Cash, a political science student I spoke with, challenges the very notion that this milestone is something we should all be celebrating.
Not to say that the whole Declaration of Independence is not a feat, but what's happened in the years during and following America's creation is the total opposite of the stated values. Even during the time, it's very precarious society. It's founded on racism and settler colonialism. So I think that the values are not. There's a conflict. The society that came of this idea that all men are created equal, but some men are not even men, is deeply disturbing. And the effects of this have been, until very recently, apartheid de jure, and still today, in apartheid de facto, where there are racial classes of people, but economic classes of people that function certainly not as even close to equal, but rather as a class of exploited people to be stored or used or killed or dealt with, because they're not beneficial to the society that's come of the Declaration of Independence. So I think it is a fact that it has existed, but I'm not fond of celebrating. Even the idea of a universal celebration of the free does not hold up in a physical reality, because you can be an American citizen, but it does not mean you may sit at the American table. It does not mean that you will have food at it. It does not mean you'll be served. Many people call themselves Americans. Many people are Americans, but they're victims of Americanism. Like many people who have immigrated from countries that America has invaded or attempted to exploit in some way. So I think that America being 250 years old is a fact, and I think, is good if people who enjoy sitting at the American table and eating well can celebrate. But I'm not a fan, because there are many, 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 many people, especially today, that we're seeing. It's things you cannot ignore, who are the victims of Americanism.
That is a heavy, uncomfortable friction of this anniversary. When Cash talks about the victims of Americanism and those who aren't allowed to sit at the table, he highlights the exact cynicism and exhaustion that causes so many to opt out. It raises a critical question. If the blueprint feels compromised from the start, how do we coexist? How do we build a society when our individual red lines seem completely irreconcilable? True patriotism might mean sitting with Cash's critique, refusing to judge it, and choosing to listen anyway. Our final guest is Adam Mizell, co-founder and CEO of Us United.
America is having its 250th birthday this July the 4th. And, it's a big deal. It's a big day. I mean, not that many countries survive for 250 years and thrive and grow and go through everything that you go through. And we are doing that. We are not perfect. This country has never been perfect. It never will be perfect. But it is special. I mean, for me personally, I had my realization moment of that about 5 years ago after George Floyd was killed, and we're in COVID, and I'm yelling at the television, all the violence and all the ugliness. And I'm saying, this is not the country that I love and that I think we aspire to be, and we can be, with all of our imperfections. It's not this violence. It's not this division. It's not the ugliness that I was seeing on TV then. And it's only gotten worse in many ways. And I think it's up to all of us as Americans to say that's not acceptable, right? I turned my life upside down. I mean, I moved out of business, started a movement called Us United to build unity in America because I was so compelled to try to make impact. I'm not saying people have to do what I'm doing in that extreme, but I do think a big chunk of the challenge we face is whether it's apathy or whether it is lack of hope. I did a road trip last summer for 2.5 months in a purple and white pickup truck across America, visiting sheriffs in our Unity network and thousands of everyday Americans, asking them what Unity meant to them. Do they think we can be more united or more divided? Why? How do they do that? And one of the consistent things I heard from people is, we need hope. I said, what? And they'd say, what am I going to do? I'm not the president. I'm not a senator or a governor. I'm not a billionaire or a multi-hundred millionaire. I'm just a person. And I think we all have to remember, if we don't engage because we say, what am I going to do? I'm just one person. Democracy fails. Democracy is built on all of us engaging. And that doesn't mean open-ended whatever, but you have to be part of it. Part of why we see such division in the media and in politics is because too many people are not engaging. The only voices left, and there's about 15% on each side, and from all the surveys and the data that I've seen. So 70% of us don't think we're that divided, don't want us to be. But there's 15% on each side invested in division. Well, David, if you or I or people listening say, what am I going to do? I'm not the billionaire, not the president, and disengage. Well, guess who's not? Those divisive voices. And then you show up every 2 years or 4 years to vote, and you're like, oh my God, how did it get worse? I can't believe it got any worse. And the answer is it got worse because you weren't there. And if you're not there, we're not going to change those ugly, divisive voices. We need the people who care, who don't think we're this divided and don't want to be, to show up. And what does show up mean? It doesn't mean be an activist. It doesn't mean, read and devour every piece of news, but it does mean be part of your community. It does mean be kind to people. It does mean help your neighbors, know your neighbors, help to shop local businesses, to be involved in some of your local politics. The beautiful thing I heard on our road trip was the 5-mile rule. If every one of us worries about the 5 miles around we live, the people, the neighborhood, the businesses, the local issues in the local government, and the picking up trash you see on the ground or someone didn't pick up after their dog, we make our 5 miles better. You know what? Well, my 5 miles overlap with someone else's. And before you know it, we're unified from New York to California. That's what we have to do. And if people disengage and don't do that, well, yes, we're going to have the voices of division. Yes, it's going to seem worse. Yes, it's going to seem impossible. We have that power. Your one vote doesn't matter if it's only one vote, but the 150, 60 million people who vote in our presidential elections and many of our other ones, those aggregate votes matter. It's the same thing here. Any one person participating? Yeah. But millions and millions, we change the dialogue. We change the tenor. So I would ask everybody on this 4th of July, participate, engage, be part of your community, be part of your country. Don't give up, and understand that your voice does matter and you can do little things. Take our Unity Pledge just once a week. Post something positive in your social media. Imagine if everyone did that. We would literally change the social media algorithm. With millions and millions of people sharing a community story, we would do that. The news would cover that. There'd be discussions around it. That's the power every one of us as Americans has. And if we're not willing to do that, then don't complain that you don't like what's going on around you, because you do have the power to make the difference. You can do it, and it's fun doing it. I think there's no one way to be patriotic, and there's no one way to love America. But the key is to respect everyone's voice and choice and how they do that. I had an incredibly powerful conversation in Tallahassee, Florida, outside of Doak Campbell Football Stadium with a family that was actually visiting there from Alabama. The spouse had gone to undergraduate at FSU. And we were talking about what does unity mean and patriotism, and had a wonderful conversation with a gentleman from Alabama. He said, look, but I have a red line. My red line is if you burn the flag, you desecrate the flag, you're dead to me, because that's not American, that's not patriotism. And I talked to him a little bit, and I said, let me unpack that. And he was a Marine, former soldier. And I said, didn't you fight for all of our freedoms, whatever those may be, including burning the flag, which the Supreme Court said is constitutional. He said, I did, but I just don't think it's right. I said, I hear you. I personally agree with you. I don't think it's right. But isn't the right question to somebody, what is so bad that you feel that that's where you must go? I would like to understand that answer before I not judge someone that they must be wrong because they do that. It is a freedom. It is a right. And he and I talked about that for a while. And at the end of that conversation, he said, you know what, Adam, I agree with you. Actually, you've changed my mind. I don't have to agree with someone burning the flag. I don't have to like them doing it. But I did fight for their right to do that and their freedom to do that. And really, I do need to understand why they feel that's the only thing they can do to be heard. And so, to the question of what is patriotism, it's both. It's loving that flag, it's carrying it proudly, it's wearing it proudly, and it's believing and understanding someone can have the right to burn that most sacred of symbols that you hold. And that's their right in America. And our question is why? And have the conversation and find out why and see if one can build a bridge from doing that together. That is real patriotism.
As we've explored today, the feeling of being conflicted about our 250th anniversary isn't just an individual struggle, it's a national symptom. But as our guests remind us, that tension is less of a bug and more of a feature in the American experiment. Whether it's Alex Lovett's reminder that we are celebrating an aspirational blueprint, Sean Evans' perspective that we remain a creedal nation united by values despite our fractured means, or Cash's crucial warning that for many, the physical reality of the American table has failed to deliver on that promise. The takeaway is clear. We cannot build the bridge Adam Mizell challenges us to create with courageous curiosity unless we are willing to sit with that uncomfortable friction and ask why. Navigating our national exhaustion requires an active choice toward engagement. We aren't celebrating a perfect nation, and we certainly aren't celebrating a finished one. We are celebrating our enduring commitment to a shared creed, liberty, equality, and self-government. We are celebrating the fact that we have the freedom, the right, and the responsibility to keep working together to live up to those ideals. So as the fourth approaches, don't let the noise of the current outrage cycle rob you of your inheritance. Show up in your local community, revisit the source material, and take the risk of having a conversation with someone you disagree with. The American experiment belongs to those who show up to perfect it. So I'll be the first to say it. Happy 4th of July and happy America 250. Thanks for listening and thanks for showing up. That is it for this episode of the Outrage Overload podcast. For links to everything we talked about on this episode, go to outrageoverload.net. Outrage Overload is a Connors Institute podcast. The Connors Institute for Nonpartisan Research and Civic Engagement at Shippensburg University works to disseminate high-quality, nonpartisan information to the American public around issues of societal well-being, democracy promotion, and news literacy. If you found this episode valuable, please share it or leave a review. It really helps. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,